All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I didn't receive any specific questions or topics, so I just briefly want to start out by talking about. I know we've covered a lot about having a plan and trading your plan and risk management and cutting your losers and letting your runners run, things like that. But I also kind of want to talk a little bit about the actual emotion that comes with trading. Obviously, we try to keep that out of it for the most part, and that's what we want to do. But I do want to briefly talk about actually feeling that emotion and what you should kind of do with it because, again, generally speaking, we want to leave that out of trading as a whole, but I think it is also important for you to feel those emotions, whether good or bad, in trading, learn how to process them, and also learn from them. So we'll just briefly dive into both sides of it because obviously you can win on a trade and you can also lose. So if you win on a trade, if you go into a trade, you have a plan, you execute it, and that was a profitable trade, I think you should be happy in that. I think anytime anyone makes money, I think they're going to be happy. But furthermore, I think that you should really revel in the fact that you just accomplished something in trading because we obviously know trading is difficult and not everyone can do this. But if you actually went through all the steps that we're trying to teach and you came out on the other side profitable in that trade, I think emotionally you should be happy, and I think that you should feel that, and I think that you should process that, and I think you should store that as obviously a positive feeling and use that moving forward because you can win a bunch, you can lose a bunch, you can be a robot. I think there is learning in emotion, especially in trading, good or bad. So again, in this scenario, you won and you should feel good about that. You dissected a trade before you ever even entered it, and you said, this is a good setup. I think this is a good trade. Then you formulated a plan and said, this is how I'm going to execute this trade. Then you enter that trade and you properly execute it. You stick to your plan, and when it's all said and done, you came out profitable. There's a lot to be said in you doing all of that. And again, we can simplify a trade as clicking a button. You click a button, you buy, you click a button, you sell. When it's all said and done, you won or lost. But as we know, there's a lot more that goes into it. So if you're able to do all of those things that we just talked about and come out on the other side profitable, you should feel happy. You should feel an accomplishment, a personal achievement is really what it is, whether it's good or bad, no matter how long you've been doing this or how much of a pro you are. Even just, for moments, you should feel happy. You should feel proud of what you just did. Now, on the flip side, obviously, we can also lose on trades. So I think there's also value in feeling, processing, and learning from those emotions as well. Let's say that you do everything we just talked about. You dissect the trade before you ever even enter it. You look at the chart, you say, that's a good setup. You go into the trade with a plan, you execute your plan, and when it's all said and done, unfortunately, that's a red trade. You lost in that trade. You did not make money on that trade. I think that you should, again, even if it's just ever so briefly, feel that emotion. And on the surface, anyone who loses money is probably going to be upset. They're probably going to be sad, whether it's $2 or $2,000. That's, going to sway the amount of sadness, obviously. But you should feel that. You should feel briefly upset that didn't work. You should figure out what went wrong, if anything, on your end, because sometimes trades just don't work out. That's going to happen. But if you did not execute anything specifically in your plan, or you made a silly mistake, or fill in the blank, you should feel that emotion of sadness or being upset or what have you. and learn from that. But also, when you lose on a trade and you're feeling that emotion, I want you to learn from it. And sometimes I want you to go back and dissect, is it something I did, or did the trade just not work out? Because again, that happens. So if you're feeling upset that you lost money, obviously that sucks. None of us want to do that. Losing money is never fun. But, and again, on a broad scale of trading, we want to try to keep emotion out of it. But what we're talking about right now is briefly, even just in the moment, feeling, processing, and learning from that emotion. Again, we'll continue my thought on this last part. So let's say you execute a trade, it just didn't work out. It sucks, you lost money. Feel that, process it, learn from it. Let's say in the same scenario, you execute a trade, you lost money on it, but you do see something that you did wrong. You can learn from not only that emotion of losing on that trade, because that sucks and you don't want that to happen again, but you can also process what happened that led to you losing that trade, and you can learn from that. Because anytime you trade, there's obviously two outcomes. You're going to win or you're going to lose. But again, we've talked vigorously about this. There's a lot more to trading than clicking a button. So if you lose on a trade and you can go back and say, I did this, 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 and this. I feel I didn't do anything wrong. I executed that trade properly. It just didn't work out. Okay, you lost money. Feel that emotion. That sucks. Let's move on to the next trade. But in the same sense, if you go back and say, I did this, this, and this. Oh man, yeah, that was my mistake. Trade could have worked out, but I didn't properly execute this, this, or this, or I didn't stick to my plan, or again, fill in the blank. So again, just to sum it up, we want to try to keep emotion out of trading as a whole, but I do think there's value in feeling those emotions, whether good or bad. Again, even if it's just briefly, processing those emotions and then learning from them. Because you can even learn from good trades. You can go into a trade, you can execute poorly and still win from it. But if you can have the discipline to go back and break it down and figure out, even with your winners, what you did wrong, you can learn from it. Because sometimes, especially in hot markets, stocks are just going to run and run and run. And it's almost going to be difficult to lose money on it, even if you don't execute correctly. Obviously, we never want to do that. We want to go into a trade with a plan and we want to execute it. But you can poorly execute a trade and make money on it. It does happen. And I think you can also learn from that. So I just wanted to briefly touch on that because, again, on a grand scale, we do want to try to keep emotion out of trading as a whole, but I do think there's value in feeling it and processing it and learning from it. Does anyone have any questions on that topic or anything, whether it be the trade we took today, anything you're worried about or feel like you could do better or worse? Any questions you have, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. And again, the emotion part goes for anyone and everyone. If you've been trading for a day or if you've been trading for 10 years, obviously the more you do it, the more you're going to learn from it, the more you're going to learn how to process those emotions or when even to process those emotions, because that's a thing too. When I first started trading, and I think a lot of people can agree with me or may even still be in this stage, I let my emotions just run my trading and my entire day even, and it was terrible. Like, if I had a bad day, the people around me knew it, and I hated that because who I am as a person, I always want to, just be a beacon of light and positivity to anyone and everyone around me, and trading got to me so much when I lost that, like, I couldn't even be me, and it was terrible, and it took time for me to figure that out. I had to feel it, I had to process it, and I had to learn from it. And that goes for, winning or losing. If I had a big winner when I first started out, I'd be, the happiest guy in the world. And not that that's fake. Like, you should be happy that you made that, and you should feel it, and you should process it, and you should learn from it, just like when you lose. But if it is completely impacting your day to the point where, whether good or bad, you're in such a high or such a low that it affects other parts of your day, other areas of your life, people around you, then you kind of need to get it in check a little bit. And that's, not being insensitive. That's just how we have to learn and adapt and progress as traders. All right, I know it's not a super exciting day. We didn't really have much going on in the market as a whole. We watched a couple stocks here and there, but really slow day. I think a lot of the market is kind of waiting to see what happens. Obviously, that data came out, which was immensely terrible. Even I was kind of shocked by that. I have a general negative kind of altitude, if you will, on what's going to happen in the market. And even with, that bias, I was shocked by that number. So with that going on, things are happening. Like the US dollar is equal to the euro for the first time in 20 years. Inflation's the highest it's been in 40. A lot of this stuff going on, even as much as the market has, drawn to the downside, I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. And I think today and maybe even tomorrow and even into next week, we're kind of waiting to see what's going to take place. I think we're kind of at a pivotal area of the market. I think we're either going to, continue down hard, or we're going to, bounce and then go down. And that's 100% just my personal, belief and thoughts. Anything can happen in the market. So we'll really see what happens, and I think traders will then again pick, a side, whether they're long or short buys. Dubon, I always have trouble letting my winners run. Any thoughts? Yeah, Dubon, that is, for me, I know every trader's different, but for me, that was one of my biggest struggles in trading, because, and I've talked about this briefly, but I would literally do the opposite of what you should do. What you should do, again, and this is going into every trade with a plan, you should let your runners run and cut your losers. And again, that is sticking to your plan with keeping winning ratios, is cutting your losers. So I would do the opposite. I would hold my losers and, have big losses. And then as soon as I started to see green on my winners, I'd be like, take profit, take profit, take profit. That is the absolute opposite of what you want to do. It will be extremely hard, almost impossible to be profitable that way, because your losers are almost always going to be bigger than your winners. And even if you win more, those losses are going to continue to compound. So my biggest train of thought that I would kind of give to you and hope that you can also apply to your trading, the thought that I had to kind of pound into my head is, regardless of whether you win or lose more, if you keep winning ratios and you stick to your plan, which means you're cutting your losses and you're letting your runners run, over time, you're going to be a profitable trader. And that's going to really breed into the consistency that you're going to have or not have in trading, because any trade can you could hit a home run and then hit, 12 base hit losers. That one winner can outweigh all 12 of those losers because you let your runners run. And it's going to be a lot easier to do in a hot market. It's difficult now because things just don't break out like crazy. A lot of setups don't work, and it's going to lead to you seeing probably more losses. But like I said, if you stick to your plan and you have winning ratios, cut your losses and let your runners run, you can lose more than you win, and you're still going to be profitable because you did that. I know it's very difficult, but it's something you really have to stick to. And again, it's really going to come down to you having a plan before you enter a trade and then sticking to that plan. Because if you do that, You're never going to let your losers run, and you should always let your winners run. Do you think it's a good time to exchange USD for euros since the rate is 1-1 right now? I got a trip in September. Yeah, I mean, if it's like, a small portion of funds that you're simply going to use for your trip while you're there, if the exchange rate is, somehow much lower here or what have you, I don't 100% know the actual like legality and statistics of the exchange, whether it be here or there. Being 1-1, I don't see why that would be an issue. So do you recommend locking your profits earlier in a bear market? This really goes to sticking to your plan. If you need to adjust your plan a little bit for a bear market, I don't think that's an issue at all. Even things that do run and setups that do what they're supposed to might not go as far or as long or as high as they would in a hot market. So if you are going to take profits earlier, I think you need to adjust your plan as a whole. I don't think it can just be, I'm going to have the same plan in a bear market and in a bull market. I'm simply going to take profits earlier in a bear market. I think you need to adjust your ratios as a whole. So if you're going to take profits quicker, you also need to cut your losses quicker, which can lead to, especially in high momentum gappers, you stopping out of a lot of trades. So it's really just kind of the risk that you want to take and the plan that you want to trade. Good questions, though. Cool. All right. Just kind of like the trading session was kind of slow. I just wanted to touch on that emotion. Obviously, we answered a few questions. Feel free to DM me if you have any questions or any topics you want to go over in group lessons. Some people, may be thinking the same thing. They just don't want to ask it. So definitely feel free to send those. We'll continue to do these every week. I appreciate you guys' time. Continue to show up. That's really it's gonna help a lot when the market turns. You might not think so, but learning in this environment is really gonna set you up for success when the market turns around, because you're gonna know what to do, what not to do, and then like we talked about today, you're gonna learn and know already how to process those emotions and how to learn from them and then how to kind of get rid of them. So yeah, keep showing up. You guys are doing great. Continue to be here every morning. Continue to look at your charts. Continue to trade your plans. And when things turn around, we're gonna make a lot of money. So again, I appreciate you guys. Feel free to DM me, and you guys have a good day.